I spent half my life as the virtuous Empress Bianca who granted every wish, only to learn at my deathbed that he hated me to the bone. The man stood at my sickbed, his expression dark and fierce. If you hadn't refused to yield back then, Lady Liu would never have died in melancholy. Throughout my life, having you by my side felt like a thorn in my back. I could never sleep in peace, but I toppled the demonic concubine and used my natal family's power to help him secure the throne. Was that wrong? Reborn to the day the crown prince's marriage was being discussed, I intentionally hid a game piece so the championship would fall to the Liu family daughter. This time, I will not be his empress again. By a single move I lost to Liu Fengfei. I curved my lips in a faint smile and gracefully bowed to the lady taking the upper seat as empress. Your servant's skill is inferior, I concede wholeheartedly. The empress's relaxed smile nearly slipped. She hurriedly sent a maid forward to inspect the board. The maid examined it carefully for a moment, then shook her head at the empress. The empress's eyes flickered. I had only heard that a Bien family maid was the city's chess champion. I never expected the Liu family's eldest miss to also be a peerless strategist. Your duel of skills had this palace slapping the table in admiration. Why not play another game so everyone can enjoy it to the full? Today is the East Palace's match for marriage. Whoever comes first in the 5 arts, chess, calligraphy, painting, and rites, wins the Jade Ruyi, symbolizing the title of crown princess. We have already played 4 rounds. Liu Fengfei and I have each won twice. Who would have thought that this final game, which should clearly decide the victor, would go awry? The sun is blazing. The already weary crowd has suddenly perked up 3 parts. The white piece is clenched in my palm, damp with sweat. My throat feels tight. Another round, but I cannot hide another piece. I had already tampered earlier by taking advantage of the crowd's dizziness. Now at this critical moment, any slightest move will be seen by the empress. I glanced at Liu Fengfei, who had not yet fully recovered. Your Majesty the Empress, today we have already competed for 5 hours. Miss Liu has just recovered from a serious illness and may not hold out for so long to play another round of chess. I, your servant, cannot take advantage of another's misfortune. As soon as my words fell, the empress's scrutinizing gaze settled on Liu Fengfei. The woman, delighted by a near victory, flushed with 2 blushes on her cheeks, but her pallor could not be hidden. Beads of sweat gathered on her smooth forehead, signaling her weak physical strength. Murmurs rose all around. A nurse in waiting shouted to silence the crowd. The empress suddenly broke into a smile that could not be discerned as joy or anger. If that's the case, then present the Jade Ruyi to Miss Liu. My son, what is your opinion? The on the seat raised his eyelids lightly. Liu Fengfei hugged the Jade Ruyi, looking at him with shyness and timidity, but his gaze merely flicked over, his cool eyes resting faintly on me for a moment. A chill ran down my back. A young couple, sharing a bed for decades. We are more familiar with each other than our opponents. At this moment, the 20-year-old is not surprised that I lost the chess game. His gaze overlaps with the moment before my death when the emperor stood at the end of the bed. I knew he had returned as well, spoke without joy or sorrow, then proceed according to the result of the match, has no qualification to participate in the selection. The outcome, how it turns out, means nothing to him too. Outside the Hanyuan Hall, 6 noble ladies' carriages were lined up in a single file, waiting for their master to return to the residence. I raised the hem of my dress, just about to be supported by a maid onto the carriage. A clear, gentle voice came from behind me. Miss Bien, please stay. I raised an eyebrow, puzzled. As Liu Fengfei hurried over, the girl's chest rose and fell slightly, but her eyes remained fixed on me. Could you please extend your left hand? I paused for a moment, understanding in my heart, then I held out my hand. Under her obstinate, unreticent gaze, I slowly opened it. A small white jade chess piece rested quietly in my palm, pressing a red mark onto my skin. Liu Fengfei's eyelashes trembled. As I predicted, you asked why you helped me. It can't be called helping in the proper sense. Her father is Elder Liu of the Pavilion, a family of noble standing, a model among civil officials. She herself is also gifted, steady, and restrained. Sooner or later she would have a place beside Song Qiu. After all, Before I died in the previous life, I had mentioned to Song Q the idea of making Liu Fengfei the empress instead, but he, hindered by Liu Zhou's death, harbored resentment. He didn't believe the hypocritical elder sister Liu Zhou had spoken of, nor did he believe me. Liu Fengfei's eyes were a little red. The proudness of a young lady would not let her accept me handing over the crown princess title to her. I smiled faintly. I've heard that your younger sister is unruly. She fled to the south to avoid the marriage, which made elder Liu furious and caused you to be punished. Liu Fengfei bit her lip, her gaze dimming. My younger sister is free-spirited. I'm at fault as the elder sister for not teaching her properly. She, like I was in the past life, was a pitiable person kept in the dark. I truly wanted to give her a hand, and I curved my lips and asked in reply, "Oh, such a carefree woman, I'm curious which handsome gentleman captured her heart." Liu Fengfei tilted her head, thinking briefly. My younger sister said she wants to marry someone of the highest noble birth in this world, dignified, reserved, a first, a foremost person. Half her sentence died in her throat. Far off, clad in splendid robes, cool and distant, Song Q descended the 9-dragon white jade steps with measured steps. When the abstract becomes concretized, the ethereal gains a clearly defined face. Liu Fengfei's crimson lips parted slightly, and she finally understood that what her second younger sister desired was precisely her own betrothed. I had already kindly reminded her, so I called out to her, who was still dazed, "There are matters at home, I'll be going first." Before I turned away, I placed the white jade chess piece into her palm. "Miss Liu, the Eastern Palace is unfathomable. From now on you will face many games where you are not in control. I give you this, may you win with your flag unfurled." Song Q's eyes flicked toward us, a glance both faint and piercing. I lowered the carriage curtain, shutting out that cold, stern gaze. The carriage had just reached halfway when it was stopped. "The Crown Prince's selection trial is not yet over. Young ladies, you may not leave." 3. I lifted the hanging curtain and looked at the eunuch blocking the road. A faint unease stirring in my heart. We were all taken to the training ground, where several guards were hurriedly adjusting the targets and bows. The steward eunuch pinched his thin voice and said, "Add an archery test to the selection, and choose 2 liangdi in addition." All the noble ladies had been raised within boudoirs. Being examined in qin, chess, calligraphy, and painting was understandable, but now a riding and archery test suddenly appeared. Anyone with eyes could see what lay behind it. Song Ying, daughter of the Minister of Justice, furrowed her delicate brows. The notice sent to the regional offices made no mention of an additional examination, and past dynasties never used such a test when selecting concubines. Is this eunuch mocking us? It is my intention. Supported by her maidservants, the empress approached with measured grace. Everyone bowed respectfully. I lowered my eyes, a growing unease in my heart. The minor discontent and difficulties of the capital's noble ladies aren't worth mentioning in the face of the strict imperial power. While everyone else was choosing a bow that suited them, I lagged behind on my own, moving slowly. Seeing that I hadn't seized the initiative, the matron at the empress's side quietly edged up to me and said, "Miss Bien, this recurve bow is compact and powerful, perfect for you." A jolt went through me, and the hairs on my back stood up, thinking of that look from Song Q atop the white jade steps, gazing down from on high. An inexplicable irritation surged in my chest. Only Song Q knows that I'm skilled in riding and archery, especially with the recurve bow. Clutching the bow in my hands, I felt like I was riding a tiger with no way to dismount. 3 autumns ago at the hunt, I begged my elder brother to disguise me and take me along. Having grown up at ease in our manor, with father and brother always encouraging me, I took to the bow from a young age, fearless like a newborn calf, and with a single arrow I accidentally struck the young 7th prince's right foot. Fortunately, the 7th prince's tendons and bones were unharmed. Because I looked like an unfamiliar stable boy at the time, my elder brother took the punishment for me. Father sent me to the frontier to gain experience for 3 years, and I even earned the reputation of a long-young favorite. I was so frightened that from then on I abandoned the crisp, dashing male attire and never drew a bow in public again. Now I have already given up the spot beside Song Q that everyone scrambled over. He can place whoever he pleases to keep him happy and at ease. Yet he keeps haunting me and making trouble. Does he hate me that much? The wet nurse spoke up to remind. Miss Bien, only you are left. I steeled myself. At worst, I'll just hit the outer ring. No way, I'm winning anyway. Just as I pretended to struggle while narking an arrow, I stole a glance at the others' targets. They were spotless, almost without a single arrow hole, while a crooked pile of arrows lay scattered on the ground. I froze. With a light hook of my index finger, I deliberately shot wide. The arrowhead grazed the target and flew past, only to be caught by a long, well-defined hand. Which young lady's arrow nearly shot this prince's foot? For the seventh prince, Song Chi, wore a faint smile at the corner of his lips and raised his brows as he looked at me. The empress had already shown displeasure at my slacking, but when she saw Song Chi arrive, a smile immediately touched her eyes and brows. Chia is here. We're choosing a consort for your imperial brother. But alas, these young ladies, each one more disappointing than the last. The empress spoke with pointed meaning and cast me a glance. Song Chi sneered and said, we're supposed to be choosing a secondary consort for imperial brother, but to someone who doesn't know better, it looks like we're picking a personal bodyguard. If you ask me, mother consort, you're making things too hard for these young ladies. The empress shot him a reproachful look. You child, you've already been made Prince Chen, yet you still can't behave properly. Though her words were scolding, her expression revealed a fondness for her second son. Seeing that Song Chi had drawn the empress's attention away, I secretly let out a sigh of relief. Song Chi, under the pretense of giving the imperial brother a good show, circled the target once and settled on the two concubines, Jing, daughter of the Minister of Revenue, and Shen, daughter of a third-rank deputy general, both of whom had hit the target. I was regretfully unselected, but the hand tucked inside the empress's wide sleeve was secretly twisting her handkerchief, seeming even more regretful than I was. She likely still harbored hopes for the influence of the Bien family's army. I don't know what Song Chi whispered into the empress's ear, but after some consideration she accepted the outcome. When the dust settled, I watched the two overjoyed women from a distance. The cool evening breeze blew in from outside the imperial city, sweeping away the heat clinging to my body. In this lifetime, I have finally severed all ties with Song Q5 at the imperial city gates. Routine inspection. Liu Fengfei stood beside me and spoke softly. One of the day's consort selections met with twists and turns, all largely because your son was left bereft. At the hour of the dog, the lanterns had been lit one after another, beneath the countless lights of the vast imperial city behind me. I lowered my gaze at Liu Fengfei, whose face was as youthful as mine, and felt a surge of disorientation. In my previous life, Consort Liu was one of the few in the palace who could chat with me for a few sentences. 3 generations of the Bien family were loyal and heroic. Under their command, the Bien army was invincible, safeguarding the border for a century of peace. As the sole daughter of Duke Zhongyong, the man who married me would gain the support of 200,000 elite troops. At the consort selection banquet that year, the Empress deliberately went with the flow, and I naturally emerged victorious. During the 3 years in the hidden residence, Song Q and I had intimate, glue-like days of affection. I had been proud and unruly since childhood. The proper, dignified demeanor was something forced out of me later. After marriage, I grew weary of entering the palace each morning at the first watch to pay respects to the Empress, and the Empress's endless nagging about the 3 obediences and 4 virtues made me dizzy. Song Q faked a medical report from the Imperial Medical Academy for me and told the Empress I had taken long leave, because I kept craving the palace's peach cookies every day. He sent the wet nurse away and stayed to make a small meal for me in the room. Eat quickly. I got these from 7th brother, still warm. The courtyard in every direction cramped me until my bones went numb. Miserably, he handed me the kuju ball he had made with his own hands. In the afternoons, the young heir would lock the courtyard gate and quietly play kuju with me in the back garden, sending the ball flying up and down. Back then, no rules or etiquette could outweigh the bond between husband and wife, but later, between husband and wife, whether close or distant, only rules remained between him and me. When he first ascended the throne, it was a year of disasters. With pleas for help from all quarters, I tucked away my naive, carefree nature and strove to be a competent empress. When he was overwhelmed by the flooding in Yingchuan, I knelt and begged my father and brothers to dispatch troops there. When Yongju suffered famine, I opened my dowry vault and donated more than half the gold and silver. The famine in Yongju was alleviated, and the people of Yingchuan were grateful to the Bian family army. Yet the man who slept beside me, Song Qiu, would sit up in the middle of the night, rustle into his outer robe, and with distant eyes say, "I can't sleep when I'm next." To you, he came to my palace less and less, clinging to a foolish possessiveness. I worked to keep the harem in immaculate order. Whenever he spoke at court, I was ready to fulfill any request. I tried desperately to turn myself into a virtuous and dutiful empress. The kuju under the bed gathered dust. And Song Qiu never came again. Later he ignored state affairs and discussed with me making Liu Jiao his concubine. Thinking of that woman's provocative, alluring face, I opposed Song Qiu for the first time in my life. "Your Majesty, this is not proper." He and I sat side by side on the dragon throne and phoenix seat, clearly so close, yet the august seats felt like they were swallowing us both whole, and we could no longer find each other. I have worn myself out with endless toil. My heart and pulse are both damaged. Bedridden with lingering illness, at the brink of death, Song Qiu finally came to see me. I had thought he had merely grown distant from me, never imagining he actually hated me. He erased everything about me from the official histories, leaving only one line of evaluation: "The Empress is dignified and proper." Liu Jiao's death lit a fire that stoked his boundless hatred. I closed my eyes and gave a bitter little laugh. Recalling the kuju and peach biscuits of my past life, was that phrase "the Empress is dignified and proper" not his most vicious curse against me? 6. The first 5 carriages had already been allowed to pass, only mine was being inspected. Meticulously, I leaned out and looked at the little eunuch rummaging inside the carriage and asked aloud, "What are you looking for, eunuch? Perhaps I can help." The eunuch hurriedly forced a laugh. After a thorough check turned up nothing, he exchanged a look with the roadside guards, both of them looking somewhat dejected. I asked again, "May I ask, eunuch, am I allowed to go now?" "Wait." Everyone behind me quickly bowed. I halted in my tracks. Song Qiu vaulted down from his horse and strode toward me, his brows slightly knit, a trace of annoyance latent in his expression. "Where have you hidden the things?" He stood too close to me. If I looked up I could smell the heavy sandalwood on him. I kept my eyes lowered, focused on my nose, and replied seriously, "What is your Highness saying? I don't understand." He snorted and lowered his gaze to stare at me. "Not in the carriage, then it's hidden on the body." In the next moment, Song Qiu clasped my jaw with one hand, forcing me to tilt my head up and look at him. His eyes were fixed on me, flickering in the night like a wolf waiting for an opportunity. "Find it yourself, or shall I help you?" Before I could react, Song Qiu's other hand had slid down from my neck and firmly reached my waist. I hurriedly grabbed the hand trying to creep into my collar and could no longer restrain myself. "Your Highness, please have some decency." The eunuchs and guards stood far away, leaning against the wall as if they hadn't heard my outcry. Song Qiu gave a cold laugh and, staring at the flush at the corner of my eye, smiled lightly. "Afraid now? When you hid the chess piece under everyone's noses today, why weren't you afraid then?" I took a deep breath. "If your Highness is still not convinced, you can order a palace maid to search me so I can clear my name." The irritation in Song Qiu's eyes deepened. "Clear your name? We once shared skin and touch. How can such a relationship be brushed off with a single word like clear?" He lowered his head, warm breath fanning my forehead. His voice was slow, viscous, carrying a bone-deep chill. "If you have to make such a scene, you will be left only with the title of secondary consort. When did you stoop to learning these petty jealous tricks?" 7. Song Qiu couldn't attend the archery ceremony, yet he presumptuously guessed the outcome. He stared at my lips with that same air of having everything under control. Desire deepened in his eyes, his breathing grew heavier, and he tilted his head to come closer. I frowned and bit down on the web of his hand. Song Qiu drew a cold breath, staring blankly at the mottled teeth marks on his webbed hand, then retreated half a step. I pressed my hand to my heaving chest and said in a low voice, "Your Highness the Crown Prince, Didn't your mother and younger brother tell you? The favored consort position went to Zheng Wen and Shen Minglan. Song Q's pupils constricted. He asked instinctively, "What about you?" His gaze darkened, flickering dimly in the night. "How could that be? The nursemaid didn't give you the recurve bow. Or, did you forfeit?" He seemed certain of his conjecture, his face sinking like a deep pool, although I had long suspected he had schemed to add an extra trial. Seeing his unwilling expression with my own eyes still sent chills through me. He hated me, yet couldn't bear to lose the wealth and power behind me, even at the risk of me being exposed for plotting against the imperial heir. He would swallow the Bien family army. A ruler's heart is the coldest. I tugged at the corner of my mouth. I'm not that privileged. I took part in the contest too. I just lacked the skill and lost. Song Q nearly ground his molars. Incredulous. You, Bien Jichuan, lost your archery. Something in his eyes subtly shifted. He reached out anxiously and frowned. Jichuan, listen to me. I'll find another way. I exhaled the sullen air in my chest and stepped back half a pace. No need, I'm not as clever as your highness imagines. I can't play chess well, I can't shoot arrows well, and I wouldn't make a good imperial consort in that high position. 8. We returned home exhausted in the middle of the night, and word from the palace had already spread like wildfire. Mother took my hand, wanting to ask but not knowing how to start. The fine lines at the corners of her eyes deepened. After all, I had diligently trained in the 5 arts and had eagerly hoped for the day of choosing a match. Is it because your body isn't well that you lost out? Ask your grandfather to think of a way again, even if it means arranging you a Zhaoshuan rank. At least enter the Eastern Palace first. Mother, how could you bear to send our sister off as a concubine with your own hands? Father was pacing back and forth in the room. At this he slapped my elder brother on the back. 3 years honing himself at the border and still no improvement, no filter on his tongue, letting your sister run wild every day. Today's situation is mostly your fault. My brother howled. Father, I only just returned from the border at the beginning of the month. Mother gave my father and brother an exasperated look, then stroked the back of my hand and said, even if it's a Zhaoshuan, if you later bear an auspicious son, your father and I will maneuver on your behalf. Your status certainly won't be below that of the imperial noble consort. The whole room was lit by flickering candlelight, wavering across my parents' faces. In my previous life they had supported me like this, and I, grinding away in the inner palace, wore myself down until I was unrecognizable and burned away the merit my family had accumulated for 3 generations. The official histories were destroyed, not even the Bien family name remained in the annals. I tugged at the corner of my mouth and voiced the anguish I hadn't had time to pour out in my past life. Mother, the palace walls are too high. I can't breathe. My mother's eyes fluttered, mist gathering at their edges. Good child, the Eastern Palace is a dangerous path. If you don't wish to go, then don't. She lowered her gaze and rubbed my palm, her voice hoarse. But today someone deliberately caused you to breach etiquette before the prince, offending him. From now on, if you hope for a marriage with an ordinary family, it will be difficult. My eldest brother snorted coldly. What do you mean someone deliberately? I think that Prince is scheming, unwilling for others to gain the Bien family's support. He deliberately ruined our sister's match. My father and mother were uncharacteristically silent. I forced a light laugh and said, those who shrink back from the prince's power are cowardly. Your daughter does not wish to marry either. The next morning my father had already arranged a boat heading south for me. The situation in the capital is volatile now. Go to your grandfather's to lay low for a while. Think of it as a change of scenery. I obediently took my travel kit, bade farewell to my parents and brothers, and boarded the pleasure boat. My elder brother leaned close to my ear and murmured, there's a dagger in the bag for your protection. Heading to Nanshuan will also loosen the stiffness in your joints. I'll hold the capital until you return. I looked at my brother's clear, sword-like brows and bright eyes and felt a twinge in my heart. The painted barge moved off. Relatives on the dock waved until they were reduced to little clumps of black. I turned to my cabin to pack. With incense curling in the air, the hanging curtain was suddenly lifted by a pair of hands as jade-colored as porcelain. Miss Bien, this is my cabin, are you sure? You've come to the wrong place. Song-chi leaned against the doorjamb, a pair of narrow phoenix-like eyes smiling at me. 9. I lifted my eyes and looked closely at the plaque, and my mind went buzz, a single buzz. Qinghui Pavilion, not Qinglian Pavilion. A moment ago my eyes were brimming with tears, and I'd mistaken what I saw from a distance. The two plaques looked almost identical. My face burned red. Prince Chen, forgive my rudeness. I will. I grabbed my bag to leave, but my legs wouldn't cooperate. My left foot caught my right, and I stumbled forward. Song-chi reached out to steady me. His fingertips were cool. He touched my wrist over my sleeve, then withdrew. The smile in his eyes only deepened. Careful, I'm not in a hurry. 10. In my previous life, I didn't remember much about Song-chi as the emperor's most favored son. Before the crown prince had even been granted his honorific, he was already titled Prince Chen, Chen being the North Star, the dwelling of emperors. The court was tumultuous and treacherous, and everyone speculated about the emperor's intentions. It was Song-chi who took the initiative to declare himself, implying he had no interest in power and only wished to be a leisurely prince, but he seemed to have some displeasure toward me, his imperial sister-in-law. After the marriage, when he came to the secluded residence, he never once called me sister-in-law, because I had a guilty conscience. I remembered that the first time I met him I had shot his right foot. At that time, still very young, the meat on his cheeks had not yet faded. The pain made his eyes ring red and his face deathly pale. Yet he didn't shed a single tear. I also heard that when choosing the heir, the emperor believed in divination and, because of that accidental arrow, thought Song-Kyu's fate made him more fitting for the position than the crown prince. A butterfly lightly flutters its wings, tugging one strand and setting the whole body in motion. I have always felt a vague guilt toward Song-chi, so I intentionally tried to ease our relationship. Seeing his sleeve worn through from martial training, I took the initiative to fetch a sewing kit. If you think I'm unfit to be your imperial sister-in-law, you should, given our ages, call me sister. He suddenly caught my hand that had been touching his sleeve. The young man's hair was bound high, a strand lifting. He hooked a smile, his face hard to read, his eyes glittering in the sunlight. Sister, do you still take me for a child being pacified? This year, I am already 18, my breathing quickened, my thoughts in turmoil, thinking Song-chi disliked my touch. I deliberately kept my distance from him afterward. I knew full well that his relationship with Song-kyu could hardly be called close. Song-kyu feared me, and he also feared that younger brother. Afterward I rarely saw Song-chi, but shortly before his death he did climb through a window. He was never one to follow the rules. I saw him in military dress, all sharp edges and force, very much like the late emperor in his prime. When a person is about to die, there are few inhibitions left. I asked him calmly, "You're going to rebel, aren't you?" He lounged against my headboard, even leisurely peeling an apple. "No hurry. I'll rebel after you're dead." Why must he wait until I'm dead? I wanted to ask, but a blinding white mist surged before my eyes. In a daze, I only saw the man lean down to place an apple on my bedside, his lips moving. The great dream returned to parting, and I slowly closed my eyes. 11. I shook my head to dispel those old memories. Voices rose in the direction of Qingyang Pavilion. It turned out a relative of some overbearing lord, taking advantage of their numbers, had seized an empty private room. The steward couldn't argue and accepted their hush money, then came to smooth things over with me. In the awkward moment, Song-chi called out loudly from behind, "My room is quite spacious. If you don't mind, I can have another map brought in so Miss Bien and I can squeeze together." All the private rooms had already been sold out. Song-chi offering first was preferable to me going to sleep on the deck. Now it can only be like this. Although Qingyang Pavilion is spacious, the two of us sitting opposite each other felt somewhat uneasy. With the turmoil subsiding and calm returning, thinking it over made it all seem too coincidental. I was lost in thought and reached for the tea without noticing that he had reached at the same time. Our fingers brushed together, and I quickly pulled back, causing ripples to lightly stir the tea. Song-chi paused for a moment, then nonchalantly pushed the teapot toward me. "You first." I lowered my head to pour the tea, hesitated for a moment, and still asked him, "Prince Chen, are you really going to Nanchuan as well?" "What a coincidence," Song-chi said lightly, There's been some mishandling with the official salt allotment in Nanchuan. The emperor has ordered me to take a look, I muttered inwardly. Why of all people send you? Song Chi caught my suspicion in his gaze, but wasn't angered. Instead he handed me a boat ticket and the imperial edict to look at. The ticket was one I had bought half a month earlier, and the date on his edict was clearly different. He chuckled softly, his voice soaked in the mist of the south. As for me, I'm used to leisure and dislike managing people's schemes. All my life I've sought only to find a good companion and appreciate the vistas of the four seas. Miss Bien, you may rest assured, once bitten by a snake, you fear a rope by the well for 10 years. I admit I'm a bit sensitive about Song Chi's motives. But Song Chi is not Song Q now that he's so open and frank. On reflection, I really was just making a mountain out of a molehill. I can feel that Song Chi bears no ill will toward me in both lifetimes. In the previous life he served 8 years as the unambitious Prince Chen, although later for some unknown reason he rebelled. When I asked him about it he never hid what he had done, nor did he ever set a single soldier of the Bien family's army in motion in this life. To be fair, he rescued me twice. And I'm not so hard-hearted as to not recognize kindness. I summoned the waiter and ordered several delicate Huayang pastries, partly as a token of thanks for his hospitality. Prince Chen, the cooks of Nanchuan are especially skilled at small bites. Even the flavors in the palace can't compare. Song Chi paused, looked up at me, his expression a little surprised. How would Maiden Bien know my tastes? I covered my mouth with my handkerchief and gave a light cough. Damn, I've said too much. I can't possibly tell him I once spent a lifetime as his imperial sister-in-law, so of course I remember. In a panic, I blurted out, "This, Your Highness, is about the same age as my cousin, so I suppose people your age generally like eating these." Song Chi pressed a fist to his lips and let out a soft laugh. "Although you're only technically a year older than me, why do you seem so mature and severe?" He smiled and his eyes sparkled, making my face flush. Seeing me twisting the handkerchief and growing awkward, he suppressed his smile, tasted a bit of the pastry, and said politely and fully, "The flavor is excellent. Thank you, Miss Bien, for remembering my preference." I had just relaxed at having covered the lie, but Song Chi deliberately and slowly set his chopsticks down on the table. A little window was swung open by the wind. Lifting the tips of his hair, he gazed at me, his eyes fixed and unblinking. "But you mustn't really treat me as a younger brother. Now, I am 18 as well." Yes, when the man wasn't smiling, his brows and eyes were solemn, his features clean and sharp, and he was half a head taller than Song Q in this moment. Her phoenix eyes hold a certain earnestness, revealing a different kind of grace that makes one forget the mundane at first sight. 2 lifetimes of memories overlap, and my heart pounds. Only now, it seems something has changed. I suddenly don't dare to meet his eyes. The spring breeze ruffles the water's surface. Perhaps what's in disarray is more than just the ripples. 12 As the blossoms fade across the mortal world, Nanchuan is at its liveliest. I put on a neat short jacket and tights again, mount my horse with flowers in my hair. Carefree and unrestrained, Song Chi was equally unpretentious, riding alongside me, only always smiling softly. Falling half a step behind me, news from the capital trickled in, neither hot nor cold. I heard that Song Q has been slow to set a wedding date. I've also heard that Song Q has had a fated match divined. The girl is bright and flamboyant, every frown and smile is pure grace. I scoffed. For the sake of bringing Liu Jiao into his household, Song Q has truly gone to extremes. I turned my head, wanting to tease Song Chi about how his cold, aloof elder brother had turned lovesick, but saw Song Chi staring blankly, his long lashes lowered. I asked him what was wrong. He only tugged at the corner of his lips and said his foot hurt, guilty and uneasy. I quietly slowed my pace until he was shoulder to shoulder with me. The 6th day of the 4th month, Linchuan. The wind already carries the first warmth of summer, but the late cherry blossoms on the branches have not yet fallen. It is the season of praying for spring. May the tree be adorned with a full array of wish tags, and let the wind cause the bells to ring in such a fine season. Fate keeps a narrow path for enemies. A woman reached out and took the same kicked ball with me. Liu Jiao. I raised my brows, and the one following behind her was none other than Song Q in simple attire. His gaze was dark and heavy as it fell on me. "Oh, So it was Liu Jia who fled her marriage to Nanxuan, and he chased after her in a hurry. Liu Jia frowned. With a soft "oh dear," yet her hand did not yield an inch. I also like Kuju very much, her eyes half lowered, her expression innocent and bright. It was obvious she had never suffered after all. There was always someone protecting her. Song Q took a half step forward, his expression calm and indifferent. Jia has been confined to the residence for years and rarely goes out. She hasn't seen these new things. Let her have them. I lifted my gaze and met his eyes. And what if I refuse? 13. The stallholder hurriedly made excuses. Miss, the Kuju was ordered by Miss Bien based on the design. She's already paid. I have many other styles here, please choose another. Liu Jia sighed softly, the corner of her mouth twitching as her eyes stayed fixed on my Kuju, reluctant to let it go. This style is the prettiest. She looked at Song Q as if asking for help, her delicate hand brushing his sleeve. Though she said nothing more, Song Q was willing to do anything for her. He opened his mouth and turned on me. Jia is a simple, childish girl by nature. You're far more steady. It's only a Kuju match, why cling to it? I'll give you the money to have a new one made. I shook my head lightly. It was never about a Kuju match. In the previous life, he wanted to protect the girl's innocent cheerfulness, building her a separate palace and spending long days with her laughing in the halls. He, who never meddled in ministers' family affairs, installed her foster mother as Lady Liu's second wife. Minister Liu was but a model of integrity and already had Liu Fengfei as consort. The Liu family basked in honor, yet he insisted, disregarding state protocol, to elevate Liu Jia to consort. He acted recklessly, and the empress had the duty to remonstrate. Countless voices suspected him of being beguiled by a demon consort, and since husband and wife share honor and disgrace, I could not let him bear the blame. I remonstrated, and yet it did not end well. These principles, Song Q still didn't understand even after living 2 lifetimes. Now I am not the emperor burdened with responsibility, so why should I indulge his little girl and let her lord it over me? I hook my finger, and the Kuju ball lands steadily in my hand. Liu Jia cried out, instinctively reaching to take it, but her fingertip was scored by the bamboo strip, leaving a shallow red mark. Ouch! It hurts. Song Q hastily wrapped her hand with a handkerchief. He looked at me, annoyance plain in his eyes. Bianjichuan, you're mad to be so aggressive. How do you deserve to be my woman? His words came oddly, which made me laugh. I sneered, what does my nature have to do with you? Who wants to play the little songbird by your side? Liu Jia was stunned for a moment, her eyes reddened, clearly taking the words to heart. Song Q quickly went to soothe her, then ordered the guards to help her onto the carriage. The man turned back, closing in step by step, his gaze so heavy it seemed about to drip. I intended to treat you with mutual respect, yet you cannot tolerate Jia over a mere object. On what basis do you think I would give the position of empress to a petty, narrow-minded woman? Stunned, didn't I make myself clear that day? Is he just overly conceited, or has he gone mad? Song Q raised his hand and tore down a newly tied wish plaque from the treetop, his rough motion making Ingji tremble and scattering pink petals all over her. He narrowed his eyes, his gaze lingering on my wish plaque. To be the foremost woman in the world. Song Q laughed lightly, his voice flippant. And you still say your heart doesn't belong to me? Clearly you're crazy to want to be the solitary empress. Bianjichuan, what are you pretending to be so lofty? His eyes hid an ambiguous dimness as the hand wearing the white jade ring stroked my cheek. A wave of nausea surged. I turned my head to avoid it. The thumb missed its mark, and he gave a hoarse little laugh. I'm reminding you, it's one thing to irritate me by repeatedly fleeing marriage arrangements, but you should know when to stop. When my patience runs out, there will be no place for you in the Eastern Palace. If it weren't a crime to assault the Crown Prince, I would have loved to land a punch. I gritted my teeth and spoke each word slowly. Song Q, you are indulging yourself with mistaken feelings. My top priority is to live a free and unrestrained life. You have not the slightest thing to do with it. The clematis you seek is waiting for you in the carriage. Don't keep her waiting. While Song Q was momentarily stunned, I snatched the wish he held in his hand and took out a handkerchief to scrub it hard. The fine reputation has all been sullied by those rats. I turned and left, my peripheral vision catching Song Q frozen in place. 14. The lingering presence of old acquaintances made the scenery of Nanchuan seem 3 degrees dimmer. Grandfather was hospitable and also concerned about my marriage, so he insisted on playing host to Song Chi. Song Chi was low-key and easygoing. Grandfather clearly didn't recognize his identity as Prince Chen and misunderstood my relationship with him. On the day we returned to the capital, my usually wealthy grandfather had only booked a single cabin on a painted boat for Song Chi and me. I was a little annoyed at grandfather's presumptuousness and secretly glanced at Song Chi, but saw his brows relaxed and his expression unchanged. He had been sullen these past few days, as if harboring a worry, because there was only one couch. Song Chi ceded it to me and lay on the floor by the bed. After the candles were snuffed, the scattered light on the sea mixed with the moonlight and came through the window lattice, falling on the wall and outlining Song Chi's carved profile. Our breaths rose and fell in unison. I turned over and over but could not sleep. A great wave surged and the boat lurched. I cried out and tumbled from the couch. In the dark a hand caught me steadily, and my heart tightened. So Song Chi hadn't been asleep either. "Sorry for the trouble," he said. Yet the pair of hands at my waist did not loosen. The boat pitched again, and he took the opportunity to pull me into his arms, his chin resting against my head. "Don't move, wait for this wave to pass." My face was burning, and the man's heartbeat by my ear was frighteningly fast. The boat was still for a long time. I rustled and fumbled to sit up. Song Chi quickly grabbed my wrist and said in a low voice, "My foot hurts." I looked up at his weak, helpless appearance and was momentarily stunned. Snippets of our recent time together flashed through my mind, and, suddenly inspired, I asked, "You knew all along that I was the one who shot you back then, didn't you? You don't hate me?" I was truly puzzled. He always seemed to bring it up, as if he enjoyed earning my sympathy. The man's eyelashes trembled. "Why would I hate you? That arrow of yours wasn't really meant for anyone. It was Song Q who pushed me from behind." I was taken aback, having touched one corner of the truth from back then. My heart gradually sank. I pondered, putting him aside for now. "Is your foot really hurting or are you faking it?" The man chuckled softly, his voice hoarse and teasing in the night. "My legs don't hurt, but if you don't choose me, my heart will." The shadow at the corner of his eyes drooped alluringly. His tone was tentative. "You said you wanted to be the foremost woman in this world. If I lay the realm at your feet, will you forget him, please?" I raised an eyebrow and gave a light laugh. "The state is too heavy a thing. Power can make a person unrecognizable. I don't want to bear such a burden. But who told you that I can't stop thinking about Song Q?" In an instant, light kindled in Song Chi's eyes, bright as a cluster of stars. After arriving in the capital, Song Chi immediately submitted a marriage proposal to the Bien household. My elder brother was filled with righteous indignation, blocking the servants who were bringing wedding gifts and not letting them in, and he stood up for me. "You Song family people, what do you take my sister for? Let me tell you, even if she were the esteemed princess consort of Chen, as long as my sister is not willing, you can forget about entering the Bien household." Song Chi dismounted obediently from the carriage, took out my personal jade pendant from the collar of his chest. His long phoenix-like eyes narrowed slightly, a sly, faint smile at his lips. "General Bien, don't be anxious. I am not here to cause trouble. I am here to ask, how does the Bien family plan to take responsibility to me?" His clear gaze pierced the crowd and fell on me. His tone was gentle, as if coaxing. My face immediately burned, meeting my brother's resentful look. I paused a moment, then resignedly said, "This man is formidable, fortunately." I also felt a surge of happiness. The crown prince was overjoyed that day. Song Q drank a great deal. Lanterns burned in Liu Jia's room. He stood outside the door for a while, then leaned against the corner of the wall and staggered to the side hall. Lately he would open his eyes and close them, and in his mind were all Bien Jichuan's expressions and smiles, feigning obedience, deliberately appearing weak, angry, indulged, riding freely on horseback. They took up all his rational thought. In the moonlight he fixed his gaze on the circle of teeth marks on his thumb that had not yet faded. She had used all her strength, clawing and snarling like a little beast, sharply tickling his heart, leaving him unable to find peace. His father, the emperor's implied words yesterday mattered to him. He held the Zhongyong Duke's family in high regard and specially instructed that the Bian family should not be mistreated, even praising the character of Bian's daughter and remarking how fortunate it was to have such a royal bride. Song Qiu smiled lightly. Yes, he was very pleased too. He thought that Bian Jichuan had recently acted as if keeping everyone at arm's length before him, likely because she harbored grievances in her heart, but their fate spanned 2 lifetimes, and they had shared many years side by side as husband and wife. Such feelings were not easily dissipated. Song Qiu pushed open the small courtyard's gate in the soft creak, the red candle flickered, the woman sat upright in the mandarin duck canopy, her shoulders trembling slightly. Song Qiu suddenly felt his throat dry, his breathing growing labored. There were 3,000 beauties in the harem, yet across 2 lifetimes. The only woman who had ever given him this fluttering heart was Bian Jichuan. Even after husband and wife drifted apart and became strangers, he feared her, he was wary of her, and in the dead of night he still dreamed of her, yet he never denied loving her. Liu Jiao carried in her the 3 parts of the bright, willful spirit that Bian had worn in youth, reminding him of those carefree days in the secret mansion and sending him into a consuming, bone-deep surrender. He cherished that innocence like a treasure, unwilling to lose it a second time. Song Qiu lowered his eyes and made a silent decision. In this lifetime, if she were willing to persuade her father and brothers to hand over their troops, of the vast, boundless waters, he would take only 1 BNG and would gladly emulate Emperor Xiaozong, dismiss the harem, and spend a lifetime as one pair with her. Song Qiu's Adam's apple bobbed, his gaze grew hazy, and with faintly trembling fingers he lifted the red bridal veil. Jichuan. But when his gaze met the woman's face, it burned him. Startled, he stumbled back, pupils contracting. "Why is it you?" The deputy general's daughter, Shen Minglan, was fearful and confused. "Naturally it is me, Your Highness. Who did you think it was?" A string snapped in Song Qiu's mind. A huge unease covered him like night. He stepped forward, clutching Lady Shen's shoulder with both hands until they hurt, eyes tearing. "Bian Jichuan, what have you all done behind my back?" Lady Shen sobbed in pain, trembling as she said, "Your Highness, the princess consort of Chen married a few days ago." A thunderclap exploded in Song Qiu's head. He seemed to hear the greatest joke, and suddenly laughed, moving from disbelief to madness and collapse. Hate, resentment, and obsession entwined. His beloved woman had married his own younger brother. He ground his teeth until they cracked, the corners of his eyes reddening. Chen, of all things, it had to be that character. Chen, why does everyone have to choose him? Clad in wedding robes, he burst into the palace barefoot and frantic. 16. I slept in until the sun was high. Song Qi lay draped over my back, the tip of his nose nuzzling my shoulder blades. "Madam, awake." His hands were restless, and I was groggy. "No, I can't, I'm tired." Song Qi let out a hoarse chuckle, his breath brushing the fine hairs behind my ear. Tickling. "Good lady, get up and have breakfast before going back to sleep." I was very sleepy, my whole body sore and weak. Letting him dress me in my clothes 1 piece at a time, he laid one of my legs across his knees, cool and chilly. I rubbed my eyes and happened to see him dab some jade-white ointment on a few red marks, his bearing graceful, his expression reverent, as if painting ink plum blossoms. My thoughts flew, recalling last night. My face suddenly flushed, most of my drowsiness fled, and I hastily threw the thin blanket up over my snow-white thighs. Song Qi smiled with an easy conscience, like a sated, "Since my lady is awake, would you like to hear the amusing happenings in the palace last night?" 17. Song Qiu burst into the forbidden quarters with his attire in disarray. The emperor fixed his gaze on this disappointing son and sneered, "You think I've treated you unfairly, and you've come to reason with me." With imperial majesty, Ping Deji showed no excess emotion, as if watching a joke. "I owe you nothing." He also knew what you had done those years. If you still have the slightest shred of dignity as a prince, then go back to your Eastern Palace. The Crown Prince was demoted for his misconduct and confined to the Eastern Palace for 3 months. The entire palace knew that the emperor had summoned the Directorate of Ceremonies in the middle of the night, deliberated half the night, and only dispersed at dawn. It was a series of dangerous signals. After hearing this, I put down my chopsticks, frowned, and stared at Song Qi. So the emperor knew all along that back then, during the siege, Song Q intended to murder you. Someone so cruel as to harm his own siblings. Would His Majesty still be willing to pass the heir apparent's position to him? Song Qi tugged at the corner of his mouth, relieved. Song Q is full of suspicions. His distrust outweighs even the 7 emotions and 6 desires. But within the royal family, being hard-hearted is not necessarily a vice. I was stunned, laying my hand on Song Qi's hand, silently comforting him. Song Qi raised his hand, gently, rubbing the furrow between my brows, and instead eased my worry. Madam, are you worried about me? That arrow back then, he and I each obtained what we sought. Flecked sunlight fell into his amber eyes, clearly reflecting my visage. Ji Chun, 3 years ago when you rode and drew your bow, darting through the woods, I was already taken with you, hopeless. A white light suddenly appeared in my mind, and fragments of memories flashed by. 2 hot tears rolled down the corners of my eyes. Song Qi panicked, wiped the moisture from the corners of my eyes with his thumb, and, treating me with great care, held me in his arms. Why are you crying all of a sudden? It's my fault. I made you sad. I buried myself in his neck, my nose burning, and said in a muffled voice, "Got it." I heard everything, along with his confession, and the farewell words from my previous life. At that time the man placed an apple on my bedside and clearly said, "If there is a next life, don't choose him again. May you be safe. May your life go smoothly." 18 The emperor fell ill suddenly, and the crown prince acted as regent. The flood in Yingchuan came 2 years earlier than in the last life. It seemed that some things were different, but Song Qi held my hand tightly, and the joyful laughter at the Bien residence told me that I had already changed the ending for both myself and the Bien family. For the matter of military aid, Song Q humbled himself and came to the Bien residence in person 3 times, only to be turned away by my father and brothers each time. His Majesty has edict that the Bien army is the dynasty's last line of defense. It cannot be lightly withdrawn from the border except in the face of foreign invasion. If the Crown Prince cannot even build walls to resist the flood or organize the evacuation of refugees, how can he win the people's support? Song Qi and I returned to the mansion to pay respects, and by chance encountered Song Q standing alone beneath the covered walkway. He looked up, his gaze passing through the steady drizzle to me, parted his lips, and called my name, Jichuan. He was probably about to ask for something, but his gaze shifted to my slightly rounded belly, and in the end he closed his mouth, standing there for a long time, his eyes heavy. He really had no grounds to say anything. Maybe even that belated word was just my mishearing after all. With such a dense fog between us, who could say for sure? Without the support of the Bien family, Song Q's path ahead was fraught with difficulties. Barely had the Ying River floods subsided when Yongju sent an urgent report. At that time, he had been on the throne for only half a year, his foundations unsteady, struggling daily under the weight of natural disasters and pressure from the previous regime, utterly overwhelmed. I caught sight of him once at the late emperor's funeral, gaunt as a withered husk, as if the lifeblood had been drained from him, with none of his former grace remaining. He had Liu Fengfei pass me a letter, and on the front were 3 characters pressed deep into the paper. "I am ashamed, I didn't even." Calmly, I tossed the letter into the censer, burning it into a handful of ash. In my last life I had things too easy, didn't know how to cherish them, and indulged in reckless suspicion. Not every act of remorse deserves the chance to repent. Liu Fengfei was already the empress of the central palace, because years before we had both been pieces moved by fate. She and I had become rather close. She watched the letter curl into ash in the censer and said quietly, "I think Liu Jiao is a lot like you." I was momentarily stunned. Concubine Liu had said the same thing in my previous life, too, but at the time she couldn't explain why either, so we just smiled it off. Yes, how could it be? Back then I was exhausted by worry and disease-ridden on my sickbed, yet Liu Jiao was recklessly radiant, as vivid as a morning rose on a branch glistening with dew. But now, Liu Fengfei seems to have something unfinished. The emperor bestowed a Langchunyuan garden upon her and granted her the 2 characters Ji Chun. The only time he could genuinely laugh was when he was playing Kuju in Langchunyuan with Liu Jia. Once I passed by and took a look. Although His Majesty wore a smile, sorrow showed in his eyes. His Majesty's kindness to Liu Jia may have all been like carving a mark on a boat to look for a sword. The candle's heart fluttered, a faint crackle, the lamp flickered, and Liu Fengfei's story was finished. Seeing my face calm and unruffled, she exhaled and smiled in relief. Princess Chen now has a divine spouse, an obedient child, and in her boudoir the wish to live freely and unrestrained for a lifetime has been fully realized, making others green with envy. I looked at the woman who had been pregnant for 10 months before me, my heart uneasy. And you, have you ever regretted entering the palace? Liu Fengfei sighed helplessly. Ah gee, now I finally understand why you urged me back. Then, people on the chessboard have no control over their own lives, she exhaled, bitterness thick in her voice. His Majesty intends to install Liu Jia's birth mother as the head wife of the Liu household. The woman sniffed, and once the constraints of the Empress were lifted, all her grievances and vulnerability poured out. Back then I risked everything to enter the Eastern Palace only to win a posthumous decree for my mother who died with hatred in her heart. I didn't know how to comfort her, so I could only tightly clasp her slightly cool hand. If there's anything I can do to help, just say the word. Liu Fengfei shook her head lightly, the jewels in her hair tinkling softly. His Majesty has overworked himself these years and fallen ill. His health is no longer what it used to be. A draft swept through the hall, the candle flame gave a soft pop, the light flaring and reflecting in Liu Fengfei's pupils. Do you know that the late emperor once issued a secret edict? 19 Liu Fengfei gave birth to a prince, suffered postpartum hemorrhage and weakness, and had no kin to care for her afterward. I personally dispatched the Bian family troops to guard Changle Hall. Not even a fly could get in, let alone anyone with ill intent. Holding the phoenix seal entrusted to me by Liu Fengfei, I sought out the eunuch in charge of the Directorate of Ceremonial. As a scion of the Bian family, a household of officials, and also princess consort to Prince Chen, I presented the late Emperor's secret edict. At a time when the dynasty's situation was in flux, this declared the loyalty and stance of Marquis Yongyong Bian's house. It turned out that when Song Qiu had made a scene at his wedding and accused injustices, the late emperor had been disheartened, resenting his lack of struggle, and thus issued another will. After the crown prince ascended the throne, if the empress gave birth to a prince, the imperial grandson would be immediately established as heir presumptive, and when that imperial grandson reached 16, he could assume the reins of government. The child in Liu Fengfei's swaddling clothes was naturally made crown prince. The emperor appointed an heir while still in the prime of life, something never done before, and it was almost like the late emperor had delivered a resounding slap to Song Qiu back then. Checking his power, Song Qiu seemed to age 10 years overnight, kneeling by the bed and weeping out, "You still don't trust me, father, how cruel you are." When palace maidens came to relay messages to Yongle Palace, they said His Majesty's spirit worsened day by day, and the two phrases he kept murmuring over and over were, "Why would even you be so heartless to me?" He had schemed his whole life, and now he was sometimes lucid, sometimes delirious, like a man gone mad. No one knew who the you on his lips referred to. It was likely he owed too many people too much. That same winter solstice, Song Qiu suddenly fell gravely ill in the palace, stricken by acute internal heat, and slipped into a coma. The heir was still young. The Directorate of Ceremonies summoned Song Qi and the Bian family to join. Prince Chen acted as regent, assisting the empress and guiding the young heir in governing. Song Qiu's palace was tightly guarded by Liu Fengfei. While I was arranging the troops, I came upon the empress's personal maid secretly adding a strange powder into the restorative broth meant to sustain Song Qiu. My heart skipped. When I looked up, I saw Liu Fengfei step out from behind a screen. She was smiling, but her eyes were wet with tears. "Ah gee, once everything turns from dark to bright again, we'll play a decisive game of chess to our heart's content." 20 Early March, the capital fell into disorder and perished. I knew without being told. Quietly I destroyed the ceramic pots used to decoct medicines in the palace. Liu Fengfei was installed as Empress Dowager. cradling the young emperor as he ascended the throne. The Bien family supported the court and were rewarded for their merit. I was ennobled as Princess Jiading, and my elder brother Bien Changa was promoted to Grand General Protector of the realm. The Dowager Empress granted 3 imperial decrees at once, one for her birth mother, one for my mother, and one for Liu Jiao. But before Liu Jiao could even smile, the Dowager's edict and the poisoned cup were sent to her palace. The late emperor favored concubine Liu above others. Concubine Liu is specially granted to be buried with him. I stepped out from beneath the eaves of Yong'an Palace and gazed across the clear sky for 10,000 miles. In my previous life, I was the master of these palace walls, yet I never had the chance to take a proper look at them. I had thought I would finally be able to play a good, lengthy game of chess with Liu Fengfei, but as far as my eyes could reach, I saw my elder brother standing beneath the city wall, staring blankly in the direction of the Empress Dowager's bedchamber. Father and mother used to laugh and sigh that my brother was a block of wood. I already had children, and he still hadn't established the family business. I had never seen my brother stand so long, gazing toward a woman. In an instant, an almost impossible thought flashed through my mind. Song Qi wrapped his arms around my waist from behind and murmured in my ear, "What are you thinking about?" So entranced, he smelled of a pleasant woody scent that put one at ease. I inhaled deeply, smiled, and said, "I was thinking about when you'll hang up your armor and retire, and ride with me to Nanchuan to gallop through the spring fields." Song Qi Qing, "Madam, you divine things like a god. How did you know I just submitted my resignation to the Empress Dowager?" I was stunned. "You're not acting as regent anymore." Song Qi raised his brows to signal his elder brother. "The Empress Dowager and the young emperor already have more suitable people to guard them. I, the king, have already promised." The lady had prior arrangements. Mountains and seas do not shift. A smile spread across my face. Song Qi hugged me, his chin resting in the hollow of my shoulder, warm and pleasantly ticklish. The storm had just cleared. The imperial city was blessed with rare sunshine, willows intoxicated in the spring haze. Truly, what a lovely spring in the world. End of the full text.